On today's episode of Welcome to Chatt, this is season 1, episode 2. We're going to meet with local lending expert Bruce Dodd with People's Home Equity. Let's get to know him and see how maybe he can help you. All right, so we're with Bruce Dodd. Bruce, I want you to tell the viewers a little bit about who you are. Like, you have a family. Tell me about your family.
Okay. So I've got 3 kids. My kids are, all of them are out of school. So that was kind of a nice thing. I've got a 5-year-old grandson. So I've got 2 daughters and a son and a 5-year-old grandson.
That's awesome.
Been
Now,
married a long time.
yeah? How long have you been married?
About 20 years.
20 years. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That is a huge success. So how did you get started in lending?
Well, it's kind of funny. I saw the movie Wall Street when I was just getting out of college, and I decided I wanted to be Bud Fox. I wanted to be a stockbroker. And so I went and talked to all these, the big wirehouses, the Merrill Lynches and all that. And I told them I wanted to get in their business. And they said, well, you're 22 years old and you know nobody with money and you have no experience. So go work for a bank for a few years and then come back to us. And so I did that. And so I then walked over to a bank and ended up getting a job at a bank and then got on the mortgage side of things. Went back to them a few years later and said, okay, I'm ready. And so I started being a stockbroker, and I found out I like doing mortgages a whole lot better. So I was a stockbroker for a couple of years. And when I quit, they were like, what do you mean you're quitting? Because I was doing pretty good. But I said, this is just not what I have a passion for. And I just enjoy helping people buy houses a lot more than I helped them like to invest in money.
That's awesome. That's a really, really cool story. So you work for People's Home Equity. How long have you been with them?
13 years.
13
so
years.
I started the operation that I've got here 13 years ago, and in 2018 we merged with a much larger company. So we still operate as People's Home Equity, but now we are a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac seller servicer, which means people make their payments to us. We go directly to the agencies for our money. And so for me, it was kind of the best of both worlds because I could still do all the local support, but then I have the backbone of one of the largest lenders in the country, and so we could bring our clients a lot more without taking anything away.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that I admire about you, Bruce, is you're very involved with the community. As a matter of fact, there was a boxing match you took me to last year, and there was a really cool cause behind it. What's some other things, because I want to get to know you too a little bit better. What's
Sure.
some other things you kind of invest in as far as the community goes?
I feel like if you're a local business, if you aren't doing some local things, if you're not contributing money and time to local causes, then you're really not a local business. You're just somebody who happens to do business here. You're not a local business. And
Wow.
so I felt very strongly that there should be some portion of your revenue that you give to local causes. So we give a portion out of every transaction to a group here in town. We've been doing it for a long time. It's called YCAP. It's the longest standing early intervention program for youth, at-risk youth in the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
It's mostly kids sort of middle school age that have gotten in trouble with the law. And so they usually come to us from juvenile justice. Sometimes they come from school. And so we get involved with them at school. We pick them up from school every day, take them back to one of our 4 facilities. We do some counseling. We do their homework. We feed them. And then they participate in the boxing program that you saw. We also have a wood shop. It's not to teach them to be carpenters. It's a sneaky way of teaching them math because you got no fractions. That's why we do it. There's arts and crafts. We have a garden so they can learn that vegetables don't come from Piggly Wiggly. And we do a bunch of other stuff. They're with us all day long during the summer, but just in the evenings. The thing about it is most of the kids in that program, if we weren't feeding them in the evening, probably wouldn't be getting fed. A lot of them wouldn't. If we weren't feeding them during the summer, not sure where they would eat. So it's one of those, it's a comprehensive program. When I started with them, probably 8 or 9 years ago, they were only serving about 25 kids. Now we serve about 75 kids in 4 different locations.
That's huge. You said something about gardening that made me think of something that I learned about you recently that most of our viewers probably don't know about you. You run basically a mini farm at
I
your
do.
house.
I
So,
do.
so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I have goats and I have sheep. I have chickens and I have ducks. I have the goats and sheep to help me maintain the property because really animals benefit a property. And so when I moved in the house a number of years ago, the property had been clear cut. It was pretty rough looking, didn't have much grass. So I added goats and they helped me sort of clean. Goats don't clean property up for you to create the space so you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But did that. And then sometimes we have big gardens, sometimes we don't. I'm pretty busy these days. And so sometimes the garden suffers a little bit. So we're probably going to this year do a little more limited garden so that I don't end up feeding so much of the produce to the goats.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, the next thing I wanted to discuss is just some myths towards lending and mortgage. Um, One of the things that we hear a lot is basically, let's just talk about local lending in general. A myth that I've recently heard is it doesn't matter where we get our money from. Can you tell me why that's a myth?
Well, the hardest thing to do in real estate today is to get under contract. It doesn't matter what kind of loan you're going to get if you can't buy the property. And so if you look at it, the biggest risk a seller has when they're accepting an offer is picking the wrong one. Because if you see a house go back on the market, suddenly it's branded with the scarlet letter of inspection issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens a lot of times is mortgages just get turned down. Then the property's got a little bit of a black eye. So the listing agent, the agent representing the seller, doesn't want that to occur. They want to make sure that that offer is going to work. I started the business in 2009. We've never said we could do a deal that we couldn't.
That's
and
huge.
So that means something in a market. We also supply some guarantees to the seller that will pay them some remuneration if we fall short based on the borrower. Thing is, if you're getting a loan from one of the online lenders, that realtor, you may have a wonderful one. You may be working with the best mortgage person of all time. But if people in your local market don't know that and they don't have experience with them, it's going to be harder to get under contract. So I think wherever you're buying real estate, it's important to use a local lender that realtors in the area are going to feel good about accepting that offer. If you're a person who's been working with a mortgage company and you've never sent them any documentation, they just took your word for everything, it's not very sound.
Yeah.
It's not very sound. And so that's how a lot of the internet companies work, is if you're just putting stuff in a computer and you get spit back a letter, realtors know that.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen those. And they've not had good experiences with that. And so when there's 5 or 6 offers or 10 or 20 on a property, today it's important to make sure that yours stands out a little bit. And working with a local lender that people have confidence in, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's huge, and that kind of leads me to my next myth of why people even want to use lenders that are not local, like online lenders, is interest rates. I can get a cheaper interest rate online. Can you tell me why that's a myth?
Well, typically you may get a cheaper rate, but basically all money comes from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or Ginnie Mae. All loans end up in a securitization on Wall Street. The source of that funding is the same for everybody. What happens a lot of the online lenders is they're going to troll with super low rates. But what's it cost you to get that rate?
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter just what the interest rate is. It's what is your overall cost. And so with us, we don't play those games. Local lender typically isn't going to play those games because I'm meeting people through people that I know, people that they already trust. So I don't have to give them some bait and switch deal. The number one complaint in mortgages, well, there's a few that are kind of the same, but the number one complaint is the old bait and switch.
Mm-hmm.
Is, well, I thought I was getting this smoking rate. I didn't know I was paying this much for it.
Yeah, that's huge. And another myth, the last one that I wanted to bring up is, real estate agents, especially in Chattanooga, we're pushing local lenders. One of the reasons, because like you said, the trustability or the the fact that the seller or the listing agent knows that they're going to get to the closing table. But one of the things that I found pretty common right now is maybe clients or customers in general, they think that maybe we might get a kickback from trying to push them to a local lender. I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to a local lender, and the one thing that I tell all my clients is, you know, the only kickback I get from using Bruce Dodd at People's Home Equity is the peace of mind knowing that I'm going to get to the closing table.
Well, the reality is for a realtor is that the general experience of a client is going to shine on the realtor, whether it's something the realtor is involved with or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if you don't pick the lender and that experience is awful, often the client's going to still hold you accountable in their experience in the transaction. So there is a government act, it's called RESPA. It's the Real Estate Settlement Providers Act. I'm glad I could come up with that on the fly. But that says that there is no compensation. You can't do that. That's against the law.
Yeah.
And you and I are not really interested in spending time in prison. So, I like my job, but I don't want to go to prison. So that's inappropriate. It's illegal, and it's just something that can occur. So a realtor is not recommending somebody to you for that reason. The main reason they're recommending you is because they want that transaction done, but they want it to be a good experience for the client. And if it's not a good experience for the client, it's just no fun for anybody. And so that's why people refer folks.
That's absolutely huge. Well, one of the last things I want to do to end this, Bruce, we always like to end our episodes, no matter if it's our market updates or if it's our welcome to chat episodes. We just want to leave the viewers with something encouraging that maybe they can take home with them and apply it to their life just to make them smile a little bit longer. What's one thing you've been through, or what's one quote that's recently stuck in your mind? What's one thing you can tell our viewers that may just help them just throw on a smile?
Well, I think, you kind of caught me off guard here a little bit, but one of the things I think that has been a big change for me, and I actually started a radio show about it. It's called the Intentional Living Project, and it is being as intentional as you can about your approach to life. None of us like to feel like we're on the end of a chain being flipped around. You want to feel like you're in control. One of the best ways to take control is to plan things, is to give them some thought, even if it's the minute aspects of your day. But the more things you can take charge of in your life and do on your terms, on your schedule, so that you're doing the important before it becomes urgent. It's no fun when you just have to do the urgent. It's nice to get to the important. So the more intentional you can be about your approach to things, I think you have a lot more success in life.
That makes sense. Well, as always, it's your friend, your realtor, Jesse Slowinski, with local lending expert Bruce Dodd with People's Home Equity. Remember, make today great by doing something great. We'll see you guys next week.